So glad to have you join us. The Independent National Electoral Commission will be conducting by and rerun elections across 26 states of Nigeria. The election will be held in 80 local government areas in 26 states. The commission says it is seeking the support of the Nigerian Air Force to expeditiously deliver materials to 3 locations within the Northeast, Southeast and Southwest geopolitical zones of the country due to the size and distance of some of the constituencies. This is INEC's biggest election since the general elections, and the onus is on the electoral body to deliver after their performance in the 2023 general elections.
The Commission will conduct by-elections and rerun elections in 26 states of the Federation. In handling such a huge national assignment, the Commission cannot do it alone. That is why we seek to mobilize every national asset, including the Nigerian Air Force. Working with the Central Bank of Nigeria, materials are being delivered to many locations. However, given the size and distance of some constituencies, we seek the support of the Nigerian Air Force to expeditiously deliver materials to 3 locations in the Northeast, Southeast, and the Southwest geopolitical zones of the country.
INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu there. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined in the studio by Nwagu, who's the Chairman of Partners for Electoral Reforms, and Emmanuel Njoku, the Director of Elections at the Connected Development. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. Let's start with you, Nwagu. Very huge elections ahead in terms of the spread. Yeah, we've held some governorship elections here and there, but looking at the spread, 26 states, all focus will be on INEC and its ability to be able to present credible elections, considering all that we saw during the last general election. Speak to us about this election.
Well, Samuel, good to see you. Happy New Year again. I think all eyes should be on the different stakeholders, and that for me is always the better way to look at elections, because election, like you heard the INEC chairman say, they can't do it alone. There are different other stakeholders whose role, whose action in action will impact on any election, and primarily will be the security agents. How much they create the enabling environment for this election to hold, especially when you consider the spate of insecurity. If you also have followed the judicial oversight that we have seen on the 2023 election, most of the issues that have come out very strongly are not necessarily the conduct of the election itself. It has had to do with these stakeholders that I've talked about, what the political parties did or did not do. In many cases, INEC has done its job. What the political parties did is what probably have been haunting them. So the reruns that we're having now, for instance, you have resignations, you have deaths, and then you have what the tribunals,
the court-ordered
elections. So what we need to do is to mobilize all the stakeholders to ensure that Saturday election goes as smoothly as we want. What does INEC need to do? Part of what I see them doing is part of this collaboration. Going to NAF and say, hey, please, because of the tonnage of some of the materials that we need to take, and there are no airports in some of those states, we will need your assistance to be able to do that. And that is supported by the Electoral Act, Section 27, where INEC is mandated to have that collaborative engagement with these different stakeholders. So INEC will play that role, and I think in terms of the different timelines, I think the boxes have been ticked. Good enough, we saw the challenge in Oyo, but we have heard that the Shaki constituency will not be affected by
what happened in Oyo State.
By what happened in Oyo State. So for me, is to continue to present that multi-stakeholder face that we need to approach election with. And if you follow that very strongly, you will see that I was reading somewhere that the Commissioner of Police in Kaduna State was asking for nearly 145 million for just election that is not that you don't even have up to one.
Well, the stakes are higher.
About only two local governments.
Yeah, the stakes are not. Even if the stakes are higher, what are the number of men that you need to deploy? So the role, part of it is to service armored vehicles that are broken down. So what that comes to me is that you would wait until there's an election before you have to service your own, armored. So this collaborative effort will determine whether we have free, fair, credible, acceptable, inclusive election on Saturday.
All right, Emmanuel and Njoku, let's talk about INEC's logistics plan. We're already hearing complaints from the Air Force saying that, look, the time is very short. You're notifying us a little bit late. We would prefer that you let us know or have this information ahead of time. And then, of course, the Air Force had to go ahead to say INEC seems to be owing them and they haven't cleared some of their debts. Let's talk about why these issues keep coming up when it's just close to the elections. For elections that we already knew since last year, we're going to hold this year.
Thank you for having me. It feels good to be here again this year, 2024. So my take around all of these things is I'm a bit bothered or disturbed that we are even talking about this election like it's such a big election that should be a big challenge to INEC as an institution that their mandate is to conduct elections. And we may say this election is going to happen in 80 local government areas or in 26 states. That makes it look bigger than it is. As a matter of fact, putting it in the right perspective, this election is going to happen in just about 8,936 polling units. And if you look at 8,936 polling units and compare it to the 176,000 polling units we had at the 2023 general election, that's just about 5% of the polling units we have across Nigeria.
The spread.
Then talk about the spread, but it's about 8,900 polling units. And talk about the number of people with PVC that will be voting in the election, about 4.6 million. Put it across the 94 million people who had their PVCs to vote in the 2023 election. It's still just about 5% of the voter register. In my opinion, I think and I believe that INEC should be a walk in the park for INEC to deliver this election without these issues, without complaints, especially given the challenge or the shortcomings that we witnessed in the February 25th, 2023 presidential election. I mean, I feel this should be an opportunity for INEC to. It shouldn't be a big deal, really, for me, because they have what it takes. They have the capacity. They have the resources. So coming to talk about it in this way, like we are doing a national election, is not. It's just 4.6 million persons in 8,936 polling units. It shouldn't be something that we should. A lot of Nigerians don't even know that there's going to be an election.
And that's part of the problem because we haven't seen enough publicity from INEC and even the political parties. Some of the political parties only started their campaigns today or some yesterday, and some are concluding tomorrow.
That's why my chief here, Mr. Zenwa, said that it's not about just INEC. It's about all the stakeholders because 8,936 polling units, put it together with 176,000. Most Nigerians will not be participating in this election. Just a few polling units. In some cases, like in Anambra, one of their House of Rep elections, I think is Ekusigo local government. I think it's just five polling units in that place. So Nigerians will not know because there won't be that usual, shutting down the economics and shutting down the country and people and all those blockage. You won't see that in this election. So stakeholders, INEC, and the political parties who, at the end of the day, will be the beneficiary of the votes are the one who should even be, making the noise about this election and, doing the sensation and awareness for people to be aware about this election. Most Nigerians are not aware there's an election.
Okay, and Nwagu, the believability index of INEC is very low at the moment. Lots of Nigerians had issues with INEC, sometimes even for issues that are not fault of INEC, but they just felt that INEC let them down in one way or the other because even INEC did not communicate its challenges or the situation very well. Going into this election, how can INEC improve its ratings among the particular areas where voters will be coming out to exercise their voting franchise on Saturday?
Sambo, I think to continue to dwell on something that is unstatistical, a lot of Nigerians, you know,
well, election, you need to do a sample on the streets.
You know, election by itself is a divisive, is a very divisive thing because of the nature, because of the way it is, because you have to pitch tents.
Yeah, it's a contest.
So once you lose. If you lose, the referee is not very, I mean, the pitch is bad. So something costs you to lose and all of that. But that's not even the issue. I think the main conversation for this election is that, in my saying, is a small election. It's just a little lower than what you had in Liberia. The whole
when you compare like that.
Yes, because even in terms of the polling unit spread and the rest of them. But what is important is that the preparation for one polling unit, you understand, is as significant. Because if, for instance, there's ballot board snatching in one polling unit, the media will not report one polling unit. The media will report ballot board snatching in the Rerun election. So it's somebody who is interested that will get to now find out that, oh, it was only even in one polling unit that happened. So preparation has to be holistic, irrespective of whether it is 1 or 2 or 3. Now the challenge for this very election is that the way it is that in most of those constituencies, they are far-flung, they are hard to reach.
Yeah,
and if they are far-flung and they are hard to reach, the preparation is different.
Even for electoral officers, some people are afraid of going to certain places
that's
because of
so
insecurity.
I said we have to understand the context in which election is holding, and within that context, what needs to be thrown in to have the kind of outcome that we're looking for. Most of the time, what is playing now is that there is a heightened insecurity, even beyond what you had in February. So, most of the election workers will need stronger motivation to be able to go to those northeast.
Now, what kind of motivation might that be? Actually,
it could be. Yes, from the security. It could be the language from the security agencies, their commitment to ensuring that there is free, fair, credible elections. And let me tell you, oftentimes, the challenge is that those who ordinarily should come out. My brother Emmanuel was saying, oh, that INEC has all the resources. I think sometimes I saw that the INEC chairman visited the accountant general just sometime last week. To beg for money, that shouldn't be for an independent.
But he has not said he has a
challenge. No. What I'm saying is that I saw that what they go to ask for money, and secondly, you don't know that somebody will die. There is no plan where you say this number of people will die.
All right.
Okay, and you also have no plan to say these resignations will happen. For instance, the guy who is chief of staff now was in Surulere. Okay, he has moved on through resignation, and then somebody is now feeling that. So all of these permutations may not necessarily come in when you are preparing for the budget.
All right. I mean, yeah, you have a point there, but I'm more concerned about the issues of voter apathy because we're concerned about the electoral officials. How about even people coming out to actually vote? In this phase of kidnappings and all of that, is there a tendency that voters may actually withdraw from the elections because they're afraid that they may not have enough security or the system doesn't give them enough guarantee of assurance?
I think there will be voter apathy for many reasons. Many reasons. One, because people are not even aware that this election is holding. Two, people during the election travel back to their places where their PVCs are domiciled to be able to vote. I don't know if Nigerians will have that level of commitment to do that in this election. Then three, security, like he talked about. And security for me is a big concern. And that's what we'll talk about. The security agencies, they play a huge role in how election turns out, if election will be peaceful. And so while we know INEC has this collaboration with security agencies, we would expect to see security agencies do more in this election to provide security, both for the voters and for the INEC ad hoc workers. There is an election, which I know was obtained in court. I think it's the Ikono-Ini Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State. That issue, when they finished that issue, they wanted to declare results. Election didn't hold in 33 polling units because of violence. INEC set a date for supplementary election in those 33 polling units. That election still couldn't hold because of insecurity and violence in those places. But somehow, they went ahead and declared the YPP guy, the winner of that election. But the PDP guys, I think that, yes, they went to court and that thing was upturned. Now, election is going to hold there again in the 33 polling units across, I think, 3 local governments or so. It is the place of the security agencies. INEC, from my understanding, they don't play any role as regards providing security. So if they don't provide security in these elections, same thing will happen. But coming to what Emmanuel said earlier, which I think is something we must talk about, like he said, nobody knows that somebody was going to die or a senator was going to resign to pick up an appointment as a minister and all of that. So elections will happen in those places. I want to now talk about taking responsibilities. Now, these are issues that we are spending taxpayers' money because of these obvious reasons. But yet there are elections where results were declared and people were returned. Even when the returning officer in that election saw clearly that the margin of lead was as such that they were not supposed to make a declaration. But for whatever reason, and these are people that are supposed to understand their job, they went ahead to make that declarations, only for court to upturn it and bring us back to square one, which will now cost all of us, taxpayers, money to be able to conduct this election. Who takes responsibility beyond just that court judgment that upturns the election? The returning officer who made such declarations, who takes responsibility for such waste?
Our natural consequence management is weak.
But,
for instance,
but who has that responsibility? Is it not INEC to punish those people?
The Electoral Act clearly defines what happens when an electoral officer derelicts on his duty. As we speak now, the audit for the 2023 election has not been concluded. So, in terms of interdiction and sanctions, you understand, it is also part of our responsibility as civil society to identify those particular places where those infractions, especially the ones that have come through, this court, and make them and bring them into a document with which we can do advocacy for sanctions and consequences. So, but for now, it is still. Even the Supreme Court, I'm not sure they've concluded.
They have.
I think today or yesterday, they concluded everything.
Today,
so you can now start proper audit, because judicial intervention is also part of the completion of the electoral cycle. Really. So now you can start that audit. We all now have a responsibility to say in so and so place there were dereliction of duty by so and so officials in this according to these sections of the electoral act and what the courts have also affirmed. And then we can then push that out.
You want to add something?
So because I was talking about reasons why I think there will be voter party. Chief in these reasons is also what even though it looks as if we've talked about it so much, but Professor Chega, who was the former INEC chairman, made a call recently, I think within this week or last week, that the court processes is over. Because a lot of young people who do not necessarily understand the Electoral Act, of course, they don't even understand the details of the Electoral Act. Their parties to come out and vote and expect that the INEC should follow the laws and probably the assurances that we are giving were followed. Now, just like Professor Jega said, I think it is time for INEC chairman to now come out and probably, because a lot of Nigerians, their challenge was just about what happened in that presidential election around the IREV and the failure of the IREV to upload those results. So that's their challenge, which many of them swore, and we saw it. Young people with their so much energy and exuberance, they swore that they would never participate because what they were promised didn't come out. What I'm saying is, because Nigerians still remember.
Anytime we talk about these categories, we cannot talk about them in isolation. You see, the young people. Hey, there's a young person.
The highest demographic.
Look, in Kara Namuda, are they the same with the one who is on your social media? Did you know how they voted? Did you know
but
what
of course, everybody is anxious to know.
No, what I'm saying is that I've just told you that closure is coming now.
It has to come.
You cannot do an audit until you have had judicial closure.
Which has come to
because it's the judicial closure that helps you to say this is what has played or what has not played. But the challenge is ignorance. If you say law, let's say for instance, you say you expected a promise was made to you, and you are telling me that the person does not understand. Many of them don't have.
To them, is the promise that was made.
No, the promise was not made.
It's tied to the electoral.
The promise that was made, you have a responsibility yourself. And part of our civic education intervention is that you go yourself and understand what the law says about everything.
Beyond what the law says.
So when the operators do the wrong thing, it then becomes your responsibility to say,
of course,
this is what the law says.
No, what I'm just talking about is I think there is need for closure.
Of course.
In that regard,
after the judicial closure,
so that's what I wanted to interject. Now that closure needs to come, especially now that we have this before this election, to reassure Nigerians that this is what actually happened. It wasn't really as bad as people think. Leave the conspiracy theories. This is how it happened, and it wasn't our fault, and we regret this happened.
Well,
going forward, it will never happen. That's closure.
To talk
then
to
everybody,
us about.
Can keep back into participating in elections.
As we try to round off this conversation, I'm curious to know why the political parties themselves haven't brought a closure to some of the issues. Because some of the finances during the presidential election, for example, are yet to be accounted for. Both presidential candidates who receive donations here and there. Aren't the political parties supposed to actually inform Nigerians what they collected if they met the rules that they were outlined by INEC and all of that?
You are the one setting the agenda.
Yeah, I'm just saying right now. I'm saying right now that there are several closures that are yet to be made about the 2023 general election.
You are the one setting the agenda. So you called us to discuss INEC.
Yes.
So hopefully you invite us to come and discuss the role of the political parties.
Yes, because they're part of the process.
Let me tell you something shameful. The IPAC, the umbrella organization, of 19 human beings had an election. They could not. The election is in court.
Yeah,
19 of them. 19 of them. That's IPAC. Because of what? We over-respect the politicians. We do not talk about them. We don't put them on the... Every time election is discussed, it is a convenient fall guy for us to put INEC in this. And the guys who cause the trouble in the election are in comfort. They are happy that we don't talk about them. Go look at the by-elections that you are going to talk about. Go look at this, apart from the resignations and the rest of them. The shenanigans that the politicians did is what has put many of these issues in context.
Yeah,
we are not willing to have a conversation.
Very interesting times ahead. We will be having 3 senatorial districts, actually. I mean, those are the big ones. One in Plateau, one in Ebonyi, one in Yobe, and all of that. Now, talk to us about how we need to have a consensus about how to, both the media, the civil society, and all of that, to ensure that on election day, when results are coming in this time around, both INEC, security agencies, and everybody plays by the rule. Because I want to ask, is the IRF going to be working fully or not? Who will be in charge of explaining to Nigerians if these things are coming up or not, when we seemingly don't have enough communication from INEC itself?
For me, this brings us back to the first thing I said about the election. I don't think it's going to be such a big deal. Why wouldn't the IRF work? The IRF worked in after the governorship election. The governorship election. The IRF worked all through the country. Even on that day of that presidential election, the IRF worked for all the National Assembly, all the legislative elections.
But you could hear
the election that just happened
at the Supreme Court's verdict.
No, so my point is the 3 off-cycle elections in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa, the IRF worked. So is it 8,936 polling units?
No, but this election is holding after the Supreme Court's verdict, and you would have heard the Supreme Court's verdict.
I don't like to discuss. I don't like to discuss IRF.
Okay.
You know why I don't like to discuss IRF? The canonization of IRF is part of the confusion that we have. Okay, because it takes away attention from the responsibility of the political parties.
No, but shouldn't people know if it's going to be a manual?
No, hold on. Already, you can get that. You asked the question. I'm telling you that the reason there needs to be education about this IRF and what it does. Because if you always centralize that conversation, you then take away that responsibility that the party agent of a political party has to take from EC8A of the results that are, you know, harvested from the polling units, and the people's result sheet from E60E. It is after all of this has been done that this IREV comes to play. So if you have a responsible political party, it has capacity to do its own parallel vote tabulation. It has capacity to put out its own IREV, and there is no law stopping it from doing so. So the INEC has created its own integrity, metrics with which it checks whether the people who work for it are doing their job or not. The politicians are not doing that. They are now have outsourced their responsibility to IREV. So when we come to discuss election, we say, oh, will IREV work? Because some social media guy is interested in sitting in the comfort of his house and be following it and be checking. But the guy who has responsibility at the polling unit abdicates that responsibility, and now talks more about IREV than his own responsibility. And my job is to continue to say that the conduct of elections has to do first and foremost with these stakeholders. If INEC does not do his own responsibility, the party agent has a responsibility to say, I have a result.
Yeah, I mean, that's why there was this result that parallel voter tabulation, PVT being set up, even by CSOs like you.
No, we set up, but the politicians have not been able to. Since you have been following elections, tell me which political party you have gone to watch their PVT center.
Well, except maybe during the presidential election. I think the APC had, the PDP and maybe Labour. They called the situation room, actually.
It was situation room, it was not a PVT.
But you know, I think just in conclusion,
very quickly,
let's not put the blame on the citizens who are excited about IREV. The citizens didn't know about IREV. It's the way it was sold to the citizens that created the excitement and the expectation. So if the citizens didn't feel like, and rightly so, that they didn't, the expectation was not met, I wouldn't blame the citizens, because the excitement was created by the chief salesman, who is the INEC chairman, and that got the sensation. And these are young people who like to just be on their phone and do things on their phone, so let's not blame the young people for.
But I mean, I keep
for
saying
the excitement around the IREV.
The things that you're saying about young people too. I mean, the voter turnout during
and it's not just the young people about the IREV.
Even the voter turnout did not even reflect some of the anxiety and the excitement we were analyzing.
But those are
especially on social media.
The people who voted in the governorship, Plateau, and the rest of them, where different parties won, they are also young people. The ones who voted in the ruling parties are also young people. Those young people, you must in the conversation, you must always include them,
situate them.
Don't only talk about the one that is on his own. Talk about the one who went to vote.
Gentlemen, just before I let you go, do you foresee any violence in any of these constituencies, especially maybe areas like Plateau, because of what's been ongoing here and there? Do you foresee any dark spots within these constituencies where the elections are holding?
The security agents should have done their mapping by now, and I'm one of those people who do not believe that there should be equal spread of security agencies for that structure of 4 security personnel in every polling unit. Your mapping should tell you where our politicians or areas or wards or PUs that have history of violence or precedents of violence, and they should do more deployment in those areas to check that violence. Our security agencies have the capacity to handle this election in such a way that we will not see such level of violence. But that does not mean that there won't be any possibility of violence. I still imagine that there will be violence in some areas across the country.
Okay.
I think the security agencies should not see election as a money-making period, where they tell us they are deploying 17,000, 1 million people that are not verifiable, that you cannot see on the ground. Well, they want to
that's a strong indictment.
They want to service. I'm a practitioner. They want to service armored carrier vehicles that have not been serviced, and all of those things. They want to pay allowances. The resources for this for this has to now be accounted for. We should be able to see that if there is violence in this place, we should know how much we put there in terms of the deployment. And if the deployment does not measure up to the kind of remedies that we saw in that place, we should hold people accountable. And that is what has not happened all this while. And so if you ask whether there will be violence, elections that are in backwater communities are because most of the elections are local. They are called local elections. And so the contest is fiercer.
In 30 seconds, do you foresee vote by yes or no?
I think that the
yes or no,
the conditions that the current situation has put our people will make it difficult for there not to be vote by.
And you, 30 seconds?
Yes, of course. There's usually mass vote buying in when people come back to run elections.
All right. Yes. Well, we must thank you so much, Emmanuel. Njoku is the Director of Elections at Connected Development. And of course, Nwagu is the Chairman of Partners for Electoral Reforms. We must thank you so much for always sacrificing your time to be here to enlighten our audiences.